Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from New York, this is Wisdom of the Sages, your daily yoga podcast, with me, your host, Kaustubha Das today. And I'm here with Mara, and Raghunath's not here today, but good morning, Mara.
Morning.
And we have today's interview day. It's a long-awaited interview. It's not only was it canceled last week due to technical difficulties, but in one sense, we've been waiting nearly a year and a half for this record to come out. When we had Keli Woods on our show, it was in July of last year. And we said, we'll bring it back when the record comes out. Well, the record is finally out. Keli, welcome back to Wisdom of the Sages.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's a pleasure, a joy, a privilege, and an honor. And can you hear and see me okay?
Yeah, I think so. We're both struggling with technical difficulties. For some reason, first of all, I taken notes and studied all your songs, and I had all these different things to ask. And for some reason, my computer doesn't work today. At the last minute, it conked out. But so there's that, and you've been having a little technical difficulty too, and we don't have our good microphones and everything. So we're going to make the most of it. But I think we should.
I'm just confused because technology is meant to make life easier, no?
Yeah, well. But before we get into the interview, Mara, do we have any announcements we need to make today?
We do actually. There's a Shloka study group with Nityananda Chandra right after the show at 9 o'clock. A Bhakti recovery group meeting at 9:30 today. And then Madhu is offering a second Ayurveda workshop for our Patreon members.
Today?
Yeah, 2 p.m. today. So, and that's not going to be recorded. So if you can make it live, that would be great.
Okay. It's not going to be recorded. Why isn't it going to be recorded? Is it that?
To get a better live turnout.
Okay, I see. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mara. Okay. So, Keli, let's just get right into it. Let me just share a little introduction. Keli is a very talented songwriter and musician. And he's I would say he's prolific. He's just you pump out tons and tons of music. You got lots of, how many songs have you written? Do you know?
Too many. I think in 2020 I've composed nearly 100 songs. Wow. And then since then, probably half of that. Not all finished, but lots of ideas.
Right. So I think the thing is, it's like you write songs faster than you record them. I think you need to speed up on the recording end.
Yeah,
you got
100%.
Okay.
You would. I'm not sure. Maybe you wouldn't, but I'm continually surprised how much money and how much resource it takes just to produce 3 minutes of audio.
Really?
So,
I thought that was changing with again modern technology. I thought it was like you could just do it in your living room or something like that. It's not quite like that.
I thought so as well. It's a little bit of a myth. It's a little bit of a myth.
To do it well, you need a studio. You need to pay for it. Yeah. Okay, but you've recently released your debut record called Falling Upwards, which let's get right out in front of it and tell people where they can find it.
So currently Falling Upwards it's an EP, so it's not quite an album. It's 7 songs, 7 songs of 70. That was a long process trying to whittle it down and choose the favorite one.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll be able to find it on iTunes, on Spotify, on YouTube, on Deezer, all of those streaming platforms. So yeah, I've also got my own personal kind of accounts with Patreon and Instagram and Facebook. But it's very early days, but I encourage everyone, if you have iTunes or Spotify or any of those platforms, please go and check it out.
All right. It's available there. And it's a really beautiful record. It's called Falling Upwards. Why don't, you were mentioning you had 70 songs to choose from and you chose 7. And it feels like there's a certain theme. Perhaps there's a theme behind all this. I mean, let me say this. I saw, like, on Spotify, it categorized your music as alt folk, which maybe, when I hear your music, I'm hearing a wide variety of influences. I mean, maybe they're calling it folk because you're playing a lot of acoustic guitar, but there's jazz influences, there's gospel influences, obviously rock influences. There's all kinds. It's quite a blend. And one thing that caught my attention as I listened to listening into it all together was there's not a lot of drums on this record. There's a lot of the music is just a combination of guitars and organ. You bring in different instruments. There's some string arrangements in there, which I assume are synthetic. Is that right? Or were they recorded?
They're real. Every instrument on there is real. Yeah.
Okay, I was wondering that. Because who did you get to play the strings?
So I'm in London, and London is a real hub for music, just like New York is.
Sure.
So yeah, there are many people to reach out to, but this one person, Simi, and she is she can kind of produce an orchestra by herself. She double tracks herself playing a violin and then a viola and perhaps a cello, and so she can manifest this whole orchestra just from herself.
Well, maybe it was nice touches, and I also noticed that it's like the arrangements in these songs, they're creative in the sense that they're not typical. Sometimes you're just bringing in different instruments just at the very end of the song. You just kind of like just create a certain. I would really call you a musical artist on this record, because it's only on the last song you really get like you're listening to a band, and it just felt like you were just kind of blending sounds together, just in whatever way you felt would best accompany the mood, the message, and create the mood that you want to create with each song. But let's go ahead and get into the theme. You chose the title for there's the title track and the title of the record, Falling Upwards. And why, out of all of your many songs, did you choose that one?
Well, I guess the music is manifest from me, so it would make sense to just say a little something about my journey, I guess, and how the music relates to that. Because I lived in an ashram for 5 years as a monk, and that was a very intense, absorbing and immersive experience. And before that, I was, as I was saying on the show last time, I was a jazz musician playing in a band. Right. And I was a drummer, used to play the drum kit. And the type of music we would play would be quite exclusive, in the sense that it would be quite technical and quite niche. We used to play, like, there's a certain style of jazz music called bebop music, like Charlie Parker and these kind of guys, and it's very fast and virtuosic, and so as much as I loved that, I kind of had this realization when I left the ashram that actually music and art in general is a kind of a perfect vehicle for self-realization and for conveying, like, spiritual messages. And I think that's really the purpose of music, is to uplift, you know. So I had 7 days in the studio to record these songs, and I was commuting. I had to commute an hour on the London Underground there to the recording studio, and an hour back in the day. Every time you get there, you have to like set up and get the mics in place, and you know, it's there's a lot that goes on just before you can sit down and finally get a guitar take or something.
Sure.
But the important thing for me was trying to make the message and the lyrics and the melody as clear as possible and accessible as possible. So that's why I didn't want to go to kind of complex and exclude people, because really the message is even more important than the music, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You know, I know there are a lot of great songwriters. They have, you know, they can blend so many different elements, and because they're so skilled, they may want to use all their skills. But in one sense, maybe the greatest skill, and some I've heard songwriters say this, is just to create like the perfect 2.5-minute pop song or something like that, right? That just carries you from beginning to end. Every change is just like lifting you up further and further, and it just feels perfect at the end. And so I like, you know, I had noticed in a lot of your I guess just your recordings that are out there, you know, I guess on your Facebook and Instagram pages, that a lot of times they were, I'm saying jazzy for lack of a better term, but like where you're really displaying all kind of skills. But here it did feel like just that nice flow was there in all the songs, and you anyway, I enjoyed all the music. So now Falling Upwards.
So yeah, Falling Upwards, I was mentioning last time, it was a huge experience for me, a life-changing experience to be on Wisdom of the Sages last time, a year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really profound, because as I'd actually just left the ashram, and I was about 20% sure that I could do music for Krishna, and 80% sure that I was in complete denial, going down the wrong path. And
do you mean as to make a living, or as a purpose in your life, or
as something that could fulfill both objectives and all objectives? So I'd come across this book, Falling Upwards by Richard Rohr, and I was speaking a little bit about it last time on the podcast. But just in these 2 words, I feel Richard Rohr manages to encapsulate the spiritual experience in a very generic way, just with these 2 words. And I think there's a lot to be said for making something that is complex simple. Like Albert Einstein, he says E equals mc squared, right? But that's behind that, there's a huge body of work and knowledge and understanding. So I think if someone really understands something, they can say it in a very simple way. If you really know it, then you can convey that in a simple way. So that was Falling Upwards for me. And the book talks basically about the spiritual journey, and how there is this feeling of 2 steps forward, or 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But actually those 2 steps back could also be progress. And this strange dichotomy and paradox of how the more advanced we become in spiritual life, the less advanced we feel. And so that really struck me, because I had a lot to process after being in the ashram, and giving myself to spiritual life in a very serious way. And now trying to reconcile that and apply it in the outside world, or the real world, was uncomfortable. So all of the songs kind of come from that feeling of discomfort, and you know, finding God there, finding significance in the struggle and finding divinity in the obstacles, and learning from the the rock bottoms, not necessarily the mountain tops.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's something that Raghunath and I think it's something that we thought understood somewhat intuitively, but really once we began Wisdom of the Sages, we began to understand it much more deeply. I think is that even the communication of bhakti, as well as the practice. I think in past decades, maybe we thought that you have to put on like an airs of spirituality or like pristine consciousness, and it's all communicated through how you dress and how you sit on an asana and how the garland is placed on you, and it's very much like a speaking down to people, which it honestly is part of the tradition, right? It is like part of the tradition that we honor someone that's elevated and we respect them, with externals and so on. But it seems I don't know, it just seems like the day and age that we're in, that most of the communication is really happening when people are like on the same level, like we're all dented cans, we're all struggling. Let's not be afraid to admit it. Let's not be afraid to show, our scars and be able to show our weaknesses. And when it's communicated, at least this is what we, in the Western world or whatever, it seems to be something in it that is not only more approachable, but it rings true, because we're just not great yogis. We are just exposed to so much junk. We have been exposed to so much junk. And so spiritual life is a struggle, and we're really dependent on the mercy. And we only seem to really get things through falling backwards, right? Like it's only through, our realizations are clarified through our struggles more than any other way, perhaps.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way to put it. And I think people really, from my experience, people are looking for authenticity. And there are many charismatic people in the world, but I feel that people who are simultaneously charismatic but have depth, those people are quite rare to find. And I feel that depth really comes from the spiritual struggle. So especially when trying to convey bhakti to others, I think you need both. It's not enough just to be entertaining or charismatic or engaging, because people can tell if you're not being authentic,
Sure.
And I find people really appreciate it when you're vulnerable and when you're sincere. And there's then a equal, platform to communicate.
Relatability. Yeah,
exactly.
Now, on this day of technical difficulties, I'm not sure if I want to ask you this, but would you like to try to share some of that, a segment of that song with us falling upwards, and see if this works through Zoom? And
I'm going to try my very best.
Okay, let's see if it works.
Okay, I beg you all, great souls on Zoom and in the outside world, for your patience and tolerance. Okay, so let's go. I'm doing a wonderful maneuver here.
Okay.
Oh. No.
That didn't sound like your music.
No, I mean, maybe like the more avant-garde version.
Okay.
Let me try again. If I mute this microphone.
Okay. And I can share while Keli's trying to pull that up. This morning, my heat didn't work. My hot water didn't work. My computer didn't work. Keli's computer wasn't working.
Wow, Kaustubha. A rough day.
Well, I don't know if it had anything to do with the eclipse that happened early this morning, or just my own bad karma. But in any case, hopefully Keli can be able to play some of his music. Last time we hadn't played live, but I really wanted people to hear the quality of the production and the arrangements.
Yeah.
I just watched my 14 terabyte hard drive is now waking up again, but I just wanted to mention something that I feel is very important, and I hope there's people out there that share my vision for Bhakti art. I think there is actually a renaissance happening at the moment in terms of Bhakti art. And in the Renaissance period, you had patrons, these were people that would sponsor great artists of the age. So everything that I've done recently has been made possible by this small group of people who have started a record called Mantra Roots. And they are so fired up about Bhakti arts. It's unbelievable. So yeah, I really hope there are other people out there that could plug into such a vision.
Who are they?
So Mantra Roots are, it's just a group of 3 of perhaps the busiest people I know. They are 3 Bhakti yogis who all have full-time jobs, all have families, have so many other services, but they got together and they realized that if we want to really propagate the teachings of Bhakti, then we need to put some resource behind it. So they got together and created this Bhakti record label called Mantra Roots, and they've been helping people like Janavi Harrison, and I don't know if you know Radhika Das, who's also in London.
Sure.
And yeah, the brothers in New York, Vas and Keish as well, incredible musicians. So these are very special people.
That's great. I would like, anyway, I would like to do that through Wisdom Sages at some point, is actually create like a forum for devotional arts, and maybe even be able to grant, offer grants and so on. But let's see, one thing at a time. So any luck with the music?
I'm really not sure. If I was maybe a bit more of a whiz.
All right, maybe we should just, okay, one more shot. There we go. Looks good so far. You can see on the screen it's being pulled out. What we're trying to do is, commonly people share images or share their screen through Zoom. We're seeing if we can share sound through Zoom. And we didn't have time because my computer wasn't working to practice this before the show. No luck? We can't hear you. We didn't hear anything.
Okay,
we'll just drop it.
Let's leave it. 2021.
Okay.
What can you do?
Let's talk about the different. Let's just go through the songs quickly. Can we do that? You could just share a little bit about each one.
Yeah.
First song was called "The Wrong Wall."
Yeah. So "Wrong Wall" is the. People are saying they did hear something.
Oh, I didn't. Maybe. I don't know why.
Okay. Well, I can try it again in a moment. But so "Wrong Wall" is. The chorus is really the whole, encapsulates the whole epic journey that is spiritual life. It goes, I've spent my whole life climbing a ladder just to realize it was up against the wrong wall all along. So it talks about how we can spend our whole life in the material pursuit, climbing the ladder of success, climbing, only to get to the top and realize it was up against the wrong wall all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that is a message that everyone can resonate with. We put so much effort into prosperity. I feel like we live in an age of prosperity religion. Money and capital is the god of today, for the majority. And so we can we can spend our whole lives climbing this ladder, and we get to the top and we just think, actually, there's nothing of substance here. There's nothing here that is actually going to fulfill me. There's nothing that is providing any of that depth. So yeah, I think a lot of the spiritual journey initially for people is climbing back down that ladder and then trying to find another wall to place your ladder upon.
Right. That song is like in 3/4 time, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
And it kind of lends a little bit of a, well, like it feels like a waltz a little bit, but I don't know, it makes it feel very, I don't know, adds to the poetic nature of it or something. And the strings is in the background. And it's a beautiful composition.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So yeah, the EP starts like that with this song, Wrong Wall. And so all 7 songs together are meant to provide this experience of falling upwards. It begins with the realization that the material pursuit is futile and frustrating and exhausting. And as we go along through the songs, we get to the end, and there is, there's like a prayer, this, let me learn to love you, teach me how to love you. And that's really like the culmination of the spiritual path, is realizing the only thing that can fill that God-shaped hole in my heart is God.
Yeah. You're talking about the song Teach Me How?
Yeah, so Teach Me How is at the end of the EP.
Yeah, just that I recognize that was more of the straight out prayer, that song.
Yeah. And so actually, that's a very special song that also features Jahnavi Harrison, who very kindly went into a studio for me in her very busy schedule. And it really culminates in that prayer and that connection. But also within every song, like you were saying, there is this meant to be this feeling of progress, and this, it's difficult to convey falling upwards because it's quite a paradox, but yeah, the next songs, there's actually one called Shaped Like You, which was inspired by Raghunath, actually. I wrote that song after the last Wisdom of the Sages podcast, because he was sharing that thought, there's a hole in my heart shaped like Krishna. And so that's the message, really, is trying to convey the strange paradox that is spiritual progress, and how so
just prior to that, though, so you started with the wrong wall, which you're saying is kind of like the recognition that this just isn't working, right? Even when I'm succeeding, I'm failing. Whatever I might be accomplishing, it seems to be my focus isn't right. And then the next song is called Hands of God. Kind of like a smooth, jazzy kind of song.
Yeah. So I don't have any problem with the word jazzy, by the way. I really like the word jazzy.
Okay, good.
Please don't
the last time I used it, I just didn't know if it was the right word, but for this song, I felt it was.
It's a good word. That song's really special to me as well, because it came about, I was standing on a beach in Wales, and I was really at a junction or a transition in life, and I was looking out to the sea, and I just felt insignificant, basically. Do you ever have that feeling where you're confronted with the magnitude of nature and it just humbles you?
It's meant to make you feel that way, I believe, especially the ocean.
Yeah. So I just felt I felt completely humbled. Someone's asking what beach. I love Wales. It was a beach called Three Cliffs. If you're ever in small wet Wales, then please visit that place. It's quite a spiritual place. And I had this feeling of just, okay, so there's so much uncertainty in my life, and I've been trying so long to be in control and to manipulate and to get things in place the way I need them to be, or the way I think I need them to be. But actually we have such little control in life. So just leave it in the hands of God. And that was quite a relief to realize that myself, which is why I think the song's quite jazzy, because it's like, it's meant to be soothing and meant to give some relief, you know, in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like the way that I heard it too, coming, is that, you know, yoga, really, you know, when we think of yoga stereotypically, it's about control and self-control. And, you know, especially when we talk about like these classical forms of yoga, Ashtanga yoga, Jnana yoga, it's about intense self-control. But this falling upwards theme is that like, we're just really, you know, even when we try, we don't, whether we try as a materialist, you know, become self-disciplined and focused as a materialist, or within these realms of yoga, when you get to bhakti yoga, it's more of a Zen-like kind of like letting go. You know, it's like you find your self-control by letting go. So that song "Hands of God," I think you conveyed that well there. It also beautiful arrangements, and even at the end, you start, you play the guitar. I don't know, it almost started to go off into like a Pink Floyd kind of thing. I think you could have just kept going with that, you know? The way that you ended the songs were all, I felt, really unique. You know, you have an interlude there too that you share, right?
Yeah.
It's just like about a minute long.
Yeah, the interlude is really short. Try not to be pushed around by the fear in your mind. Be led instead by the love in your heart. That's all it is.
Beautiful. Yeah, no. So I'm understanding it much better now. So, like, in other words, each song is taking us one step forward on a journey here. It was a beautiful interlude.
That's the idea. That's the
Concept
idea.
album, in a sense.
Sorry?
It's a concept album.
Yeah.
Kind of. Maybe not intentionally, but you were able to piece the songs together in that way.
Yeah, 100%. I really, because it's not so long to listen to through the whole time and hopefully have on repeat. It's really meant to take people on a short and clear journey. And my main intention was just to keep it very simple, very sincere, and share something or offer something that could perhaps heal. I think a lot of people need healing these days. We live in a very broken world, and I think that my main objective in life at the moment is to try and offer some solace, offer some healing through art and through these incredible messages that are conveyed in the ancient texts and these Bhakti texts.
Right. So that interlude, which shares this message about, I guess, getting over one's fear or not being ruled by one's fear, and then the title track begins, and I believe the first line of that is, "The closer I get to the light, the more of my shadow I see." Right? And so, you know, perhaps we struggle when we see our shadow, but like if you can get over the fear and actually look at your own shadows, right? Look at your own darker sides, look at your own attachments, look at your own fears. It's kind of the beginning of the growth.
Yeah, that's the hard part. Bhakti is a wonderful thing because it's an art, it's a science, it's a culture, it's a lifestyle. And externally, it can look very wonderful. The dancing, the singing, the food, the knowledge, the color, everything about it is captivating and attractive. And for me, anyway.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to realize that, hey, these Bhakti yogis they're serious, actually. They're serious people. They're not just happy clappies, you know, they're doing real work. And for me, that real work is looking inside the heart and looking at that shadow. And I kind of had this realization that people who run away from their dark side, or they try and repress their darkness and their shadow, it comes out in strange ways, you know, it comes out in quirky ways, destructive ways, violent ways. But people who actually have the courage to sit with themselves and try and integrate that darkness, I feel that they make progress a lot quicker in spiritual life. But yeah, that was one difficult realization. The closer I get to the light, the more of my shadow I see. So that light is,
Did you feel that your path of, like, taking you out of ashram life and out of monk life, was this kind of these kind of realizations driving that, or were these realizations growing out of that? Was that a theme in your own life?
100%. 100%. I think I highly encourage everyone and anyone that's listening, if you have an opportunity in your life, go to an ashram, or integrate yourself into a community or a spiritual institution. It will give you the most incredible foundation that you could ever hope for. A lot of people don't have the opportunity because life is distracting. But along with the leverage that comes from being in an ashram or in a community, there's also the struggle to be autonomous and to have your own identity, if that makes sense. So when I was living as a monk, I kind of had quite a diluted identity, or I felt almost dismantled, you know. I wasn't really sure who I was. All I knew was I really wanted to find out, who am I, who is God, and what's our relationship? They were my three big questions. And the thing that shocked me the most is when I left the ashram, I felt like, okay, only now is my spiritual life beginning. And so, I felt like as I was getting closer to answering those questions, who am I, who is God, what is our relationship? I started to realize that there was a lot of distance between these two. You know, there was a lot of distance between myself and God. And in order to close that gap, I felt like I had to close the gap between the person I feel like I am on the inside and the person that I project or portray to the outside world. So it really becomes apparent when you start striving to be a more spiritually minded person and to connect with the divine consciously. You really start to feel this big gap within yourself of who I am on the inside and who I project. And that's difficult, but what's on the other side of that struggle is all of the gifts and joy.
Or it gets real. It feels to me, even again in the progression of the record, you know, it starts with the recognition that material life is going up, you know, no matter how high I'm climbing, I'm still going up the wrong wall. And then getting over one's fears of seeing one's darker side, becoming comfortable with it. And, you know, I think that yoga philosophy, bhakti yoga philosophy especially, it allows us to view our darker sides honestly, but it provides us a little bit of I don't know, maybe we can take comfort in that when we're looking at our own dark side, we're not actually looking at us, we're looking at our mind, we're looking at the vehicle that we're in, you know. And so you can identify it, you can go ahead and look at your darker corners of your mind and realize that's not me, and that's something that's meant and can be programmed, reprogrammed. You know, it's something that has been programmed or hacked, and it can be reprogrammed, you know, through the process. And of course, your music is a great way of doing that. And so then when you get through the song Falling Upwards, which again has, you know, now we're really comfortable with that idea. We've gained realization from that. I don't need to be afraid of my darker side. And even the deeper I realize that, the more I'm capable of getting to that, like, real genuine spirituality where you're speaking to God, right? Like you're actually speaking to God in all humility. And that's so nicely shared in that next song, Teach Me How. Right?
Yeah.
And that song, I noticed, it begins with the flute.
Yeah, so that's, you know, I have actually some friends in the Bhakti recovery group, which I believe is under your kind of umbrella of
part of our Wisdom of the Sages thing.
Yeah. And the thing I find so interesting about just the 12-step program, for anyone that isn't familiar with 12-step, it's a formula that you can go through if you're trying to overcome or transcend your addiction, whatever it may be. And the thing I find so interesting is that from the first, Sorry. My friend Ananda was trying to call me.
Gotcha.
Yeah, from the first step all the way to the last, it's stressed that we need a connection with God. So I was asking myself this question: what's the difference between God consciousness and Krishna consciousness? Because in Bhakti Yoga, we believe, well, Krishna is the supreme. Krishna is God. So what's the higher power? Yeah. So what's the difference, you know? And for me, I realized that the difference is in Bhakti, we are not just conceiving of the higher power in terms of a localized aspect that may be consciousness within one's heart or within the hearts of all beings. And it's not just seeing the higher power in the energy that is around us in the universe, but there is a more personal aspect there. There is an opportunity to connect with that higher power in a more intimate way, a personal way. And yeah, that's really the message of that song, Teach Me How, is actually it's so special to have access to that more intimate relationship with divinity. And at the very end of that song, there is a mantra, which is the Maha Mantra or the Krishna mantra. And yeah, that's meant to be really the culmination of spiritual life, in my understanding, is that we have finally retrieved, or we have remembered our eternal relationship with one's higher power, which is actually very personal and individual. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense to me. And I just think it's a beautiful way to round off the record, where, in other words, it's just a record about when you line it all up, recognizing the futility of material life, but overcoming the struggles of spiritual life, which means becoming comfortable with our darker side. And then from that point, then you get to, what the real mystics do. They have, their minds aren't so distracted. They're able to actually feel the presence of God in the heart and feel and talk to God. And so that song again, it really comes off as a full-on prayer. Finally, the soul is doing what it's designed to do, right? Which is communicate with God, have some kind of communion with God, right? And so it manifests as begging, basically,
Mhm.
at least especially in the early stages. So it's a really beautiful record. Again, we encourage everyone to get it and check it out. I don't know if you can you really give records as gifts for Christmas gifts like we used to. There must be a way that you send it to someone or something like that.
Yeah, you could. I'm not sure if there's a gift version, because at the moment I don't have like CDs or vinyls or anything physical. But there's actually a lot planned for this this project, and a lot of the more physical manifestations of these songs will hopefully
like
be available.
videos or you mean just like CDs and stuff, or other cards and different things they have nowadays?
Yeah, many things like that. Videos and CDs and vinyls and more physical things. Because I feel like it's important. Everything about the project is handmade, in the sense that like all of the music was recorded in a studio using like an analog desk, like an old-fashioned desk, right? And all of these like super old preamps and different equipment that's like very traditional. And even the artwork, the artist Rati Sivya, you can check her out on Instagram. She's an incredible artist who specializes in Indian miniature. And even the artwork for the EP has that very traditional vibe. She makes her art by actually crushing like stones and crystals and like lapis lazuli and malachite, crushing it into a fine powder, mixing it with gum arabic and water, and making her own paints and brushes, and everything about it is very handmade. And I think the real message that I guess I'm trying to convey and live myself is that everything can be used in service to your higher power. Everything can be used in service. You just have to know how. And I think the real yogi understands that, that everything in the material world is neutral. It's not that money is good or bad. It's not that technology is good or bad, but it's the intention by which we use these things. That was the idea.
Okay. And so is it too soon for me to ask what's next? Like, do you have plans for next record?
100%. Yeah. So I really want to push this this idea of mantra roots, because it's something that's really changed my life, and I never knew it would be possible. I was thinking, okay, 100% I want to do something artistic, and I want to do music for Krishna and for the world, and to provide some healing, and perhaps even sustain myself financially, but obviously not make that the priority. And I just thought, nothing like that's going to exist. I'm going to have to compromise somehow. I'm probably going to have to get a terrible job working in retail and just do the music on the side, or whatever it is, sell out to some terrible record label that's just going to exploit and manipulate me until my soul is completely just like fried. But these guys are really special, and they've committed to kind of helping me to go on that journey of presenting and conveying the message of bhakti through music and art in a big way. So I've just started, and I really want to scale it up, and I'm going to run with it and see where it goes. But as I said at the beginning, I feel that music and art is a perfect vehicle for self-realization. It's it gives you an opportunity to evaluate and express your own experience, and it can also resonate with others and activate a kind of interest in others. So at the moment I have too many songs to know what to do with, but yeah, I'm really hoping to I'd like to have my own music studio in the future and give myself to yeah, sharing these messages through the medium of music and art for the rest of my life, as long as Krishna would like.
Can we count on at least one new record coming out in 2022?
100%, 100%,
Okay.
at least one.
At least one. Okay. Well, Keli, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, but I was really happy to talk to you about your record and learn about it. And hopefully a lot of people go out and listen to it. It's great. You know, again, I think I mentioned this the last time you were on the show, but I feel like I was raised on, Western music. And from a very early age, it left very deep impressions in me. And while I love kirtan, and I especially like live kirtan, but when I'm home, it's somehow there's something in me that craves, Western style of songwriting and so on. And so I don't think, in the 40 or 50 years, since Srila Prabhupada came to the West, there's been some of that, there was, of course, George Harrison songs and like Raghunath's songs, in his own, hardcore genre. And then, like in those, in the 70s, there's devotees like Mangalananda, who was like composing, quite a talented composer, but not a lot of that. We've got a lot of talented, especially right now. You're saying there's a Bhakti Renaissance, and I agree, and there's a lot of talent. But this form, which is the most popular form for music, is like writing songs. Writing songs in the English language that people can understand and relate to, that can move one's heart, that can work their way into our minds and our memories and resonate there. That if we can have those really music expressing all of our different moods and so on, but always tying it in to that spiritual path and that devotional path. I think it's an incredibly important contribution. And I think that as Bhakti, I have full faith that Bhakti will continue to grow and spread. I think people need it more than ever, and people are becoming more receptive to it. It's just, we don't know what song, what film, that has the potential or will, reach millions of people, and touch millions of people. And so I think I see you as a person that's, we can all try to do that. But I think you've been given a gift, as a songwriter and as a musician. So I really see you at the forefront of this kind of renaissance. So I thank you for what you're doing. I thank you for coming with us again. The next record you put out, we'll bring you back. And please, everyone, go out there and get yourself a copy of Falling Upwards.
Thank you so much. And I just want to, thank you both as well for having me. It's always a huge pleasure to connect with you and just get your company. And I also want to mention, if anyone's out there and you feel inspired, as I said, the Bhakti Renaissance is just beginning. So if you feel like you have something to add, or if you'd like to collaborate in some kind of way, please get in touch with me on Instagram or Facebook, Keli Woods. And it would just, even if there's no collaboration, I'm very much into having, I'm more interested in having friends than fans.
Okay.
So, please get in touch.
Thank you. Now, Mary, have you got music lined up?
I do.
All right. And could you do me a favor and save the chat for me?
Sure. Can you hear this okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, great. Good.
And so we're back with Raghunath tomorrow at 8 a.m. back into the Bhagavatam.